Vamos a empezar. Gracias por estar ahí. No sé si lo sabéis, la semana pasada me pidieron si podía hacer la charla en inglés. So I think I'm going to switch to English. I hope it isn't a problem. For me, it wasn't easy. I needed this talk was originally in French. I have prepared it in Spanish. It's the first time I do it in English, so please bear with me. I hope it's going to work. So let's begin. My name is Horacio Gonzalez. I am from Spain, from Madrid, but I have been living in France for the last 20 years. So yeah, I know. My accent combines the worst traits of Spanish and French accents. Sorry, really sorry. I work for OVH, hosting and cloud provider company, the biggest hosting and cloud provider company. We are sponsors here, so please come to our booth after the talk. So we are the only European alternative to the big Google, Amazon, Microsoft, Alibaba, and other cloud providers. We have 30 data centers, hundreds of millions of servers, and please, next time you have an infrastructure to build an application to host, before going to others, think there is an European alternative. So let's begin. I am going to speak about web components. So let me ask before, who here knows web components? Hey, that's way better than 1 or 2 years ago. So I am going to do really a 3-minute context for people who don't know web components. Web components are a standard, a W3C standard, a web standard. So they work in all modern browsers, Firefox, Safari, Chrome, New Edge, because it is based on Chrome engine. And it allows you to create your own HTML tags. You are going to be able to build components that you will use in any web application with any framework or without any framework at all, and they are going to work in any modern browser, in all browsers with polyfills, and those components encapsulate the behavior and the look of the component. It's having in the web something that desktop developers had for the last 30 years. If you have done Qt, Java Swing, Visual C, you already know what a component, a visual component is. Now we can have it in the browser side, and they work in any context with any framework or without any framework. They are fully interoperable, and they are based in 3 standards, or 3 parts of the standard: custom elements, shadow DOM, and templates. Custom elements, it's a standard that allows you to define a new HTML tag. Hey, I am going to define my element, and then I am going to describe the behavior and the look of the element. And then, after that, you can use the new tag anywhere in your web page. Shadow DOM allows to encapsulate. Allows, for example, that the external style doesn't bleed into your component and that the internal state doesn't go outside the component. And templates allows to take a definition and a definition of a look, an HTML definition, and clone it anywhere in your code. With these 3 substandards, they have built something that allows you to create new components. But basically, there are things that you already know as web developers. You are going to use attributes and JavaScript properties as input weight for your component. You are going to call for methods in your components, and the component is going to emit events, something that every web developer can understand. So why I have done this talk? Yeah, because I am getting old and I become grumpy. I have been talking about web components for a long time, 5, almost 6 years now. I have talked about that in France, in many places in Europe, even once at the United States. And I always say the same thing, web components are a revolution. It's going to change the way we build web applications. You will be able to build applications using reusable bricks, brick by brick, like a Lego, and then you are going to use the same bricks in any other project with any other framework. It's great. And last year, somebody who has already seen other talks told me, hey, Horacio, okay, you see, it's 2019, you have been speaking about that for years. Where is your revolution? I think you are a dreaming guy. And even worse, another one in another talk, and that was the inception of this talk, told me, hey, you know, your web component thinks it's like Betamax. Maybe it is better, but it won't work. You have already lost, and you don't even know it. I was, but not? Yeah. So I promised myself and him to do a talk about that and explain why web components aren't really like Betamax. So I prepared my talk, and several weeks ago, I showed the first slide to my wife, and she told me, hey, Betamax, I think you are getting old, my dear. Most of the people at the room aren't going to know what Betamax is. So I decided to add a small section to my talk. What's Betamax? So please, who here know what is Betamax? Thank you, almost half of the room. Don't worry, for the other half, this is for you. So, last century, there was something wonderful. It was black and white TV. By the 1950s, there was something like that in almost every American home, and 20 years later, in almost every Spanish home. It was great, everybody loves TV. But people wanted to be able to record their favorite programs. So the industrials began to build ways to record programs. This was the first one, made by Sony. It was a tape recorder. It wasn't a cassette. It was a tape, like the old computer tapes. It was bulky. It wasn't easy to use, but it worked. And it was the beginning of a revolution, a true revolution, this one. And then they said, OK, it's great, but the tape are bulky and wealthy. We can do better. And they decided to use the same thing that we're beginning to use with music, using cassettes. Yeah, old cassettes. That was the U-Matic, the first video cassette recorder, VCR. And then the problem began. Because Sony was sure, they had invented the technology, they were sure their way was the best one. And they decided to propose their solution, Sony Betamax. It was technically, for the time, it was simply wonderful, great quality, great image quality, great sound, very stable. You can read it lots and lots of time without losing quality. But they wanted to keep it for themselves. They didn't license it, and it was their business. And another company, JVC, created their own cassette, their own VCR, VHS. That VHS, almost everybody here has knows it, not? Yeah? So most of you know that. Many, you don't know this one. Why? Well, because there was a format war, a bloody format war. There is a big Wikipedia page about it, very interesting. But the idea, in one side you had Sony, in the other side you have JVC. They wanted to impose their format. On the paper, Betamax was better. Everybody agreed about that, even JVC people. High quality recording, better resolution, better sound, even the recorders was better built. Everybody at Sony thought they were going to win. But it didn't happen. Market decided otherwise, and VHS became the standard. And Betamax, even if it was better, it failed. And as usual, the winner took all. Everybody has a VHS VCR. Well, it wasn't a very long victory because several years later, a new contender arrived, and the rest, I leave that for another talk. So Betamax, VHS. Why it didn't fail? Well, everybody thought it was superior. Everybody, even at the competitors, thought the technology was great. But it was more expensive. Yeah, you have a better recorder, you have better system, but you need to spend some $100 more. And people, sometimes they prefer something that it isn't so good, but it's more affordable. And also there was another problem. It was better, but they didn't thought they needed to improve. So the original Betamax, it has a recording length of only 1 hour. VHS has 2 hours, later 3, but Sony was sure our product is better. We don't need to improve recording time. After all, people want to record their programs, not the movies. And then there was compatibility. Sony kept their treasure for themselves. JVC began to license their technology. There was Panasonic, there was RCA, there was, after some time, all the electronic industrials had a license of VHS and build VHS recorders, cassettes, and all that. And that's were the two reasons because everybody switched to VHS, the real down-to-earth solution. Hey, all my friends have VHS, VCR, so what I am going to buy? I want them to lend me some movies, I want to lend my movies to them, let's have the same thing. So they began with some small problem like that, and then you have the snowball effect. So why I am telling you this story? Because on the paper, it could be a similar thing with web components and other JavaScript frameworks. Hey, today everybody is developing in React or in Vue. Some years ago, everybody was doing Angular, and nobody is doing your web component thing, man. So it's like Betamax, maybe it's better, but nobody is doing it. Well, not really. Maybe we are at the opposite case. Maybe web components are the VHS, and that's my case, and that's my talk. Let's begin with something important, compatibility. Today, if you are doing React, you are creating hundreds of React components, and you can use them in any React application. But if tomorrow a customer or another team in your company wants to do an Angular or a Vue or a vanilla JavaScript application, you are going to recode all the components you have done in React. With web components, if you do today your code with components and you put it in a React application, tomorrow you can use the same component in an Angular application, in a Vue application, in a framework-less application. Web components work everywhere. That's a website, Custom Elements Everywhere, that shows the compatibility of web components and the different frameworks. It's a very interesting resource. And especially if you have been developing for some time, who here has done Angular JS, the first Angular? Hey. Do you remember the day of Google said, hey, people, we have a new Angular. OK, it's no Angular JS, it's Angular only, and it's the same but different. It uses a different language, TypeScript. It uses a different paradigm. You have directive, though you have components, and it's almost the same but wholly different. So if you want to switch, you take your wonderful code, you put it in the trash bin, and you begin anew. Hey, it is great. I was there. Yeah. But it's not so odd. It happens every time. It happens also when you do a new project in another framework. Why? Because maybe you want to learn a new framework, or you have a customer that wants your application to integrate in another application with another framework, or maybe because the other team in your company has decided to try a new technology, and then you have lots of components in your technology, and you put them in the trash bin, and you develop, once again, the same code. I don't know about you, but I hate rewriting my code again and again and again. That's the reason why I love web components. And what about sharing code? You have several technologies in your company. You are going to write some UI components that should look more or less the same in an application, but you cannot use them in different applications because you have your React component that is similar but very different from an Angular component that is really similar but really different of a Vue component. So for me, one of the biggest selling points of web components is that you are going to write your UI components once. You are going to use them everywhere. Compatibility is on the web component side, and compatibility is important because compatibility means saving money. Don't forget, at the end, saving money is really important. So for me, web components are indeed a revolution. They are a revolution today, but most of the developers don't see it. It's a silent revolution. Do you know that most of the websites you use every day for your job, GitHub, for example, Twitter, for example, heavily use web components and have been doing it for several years now, and maybe you don't know about it? That's the silent revolution. For example, do you know that when you embed a Twitter in a blog, in a web page, in any application, you are using a web component? You are using a Twitter widget web component. Yeah, it seems logic. You are going to embed a tweet. You need to be able to embed it in a lot of different applications, in an old-school WordPress blog, in a Medium site, in a web application, in a corporate portal. So the embedding needs to work in any context. Which is the only technology that can do it today? Web components. When you are at GitHub, you have a lot of web components too. Many sites, when you need to be able to take some piece of your application and use it everywhere, the only technological solution that allows that today is web components. But they have also already won by another reason. Everybody has switched to a component approach. Okay, there are different kinds of components, but we have already a component architecture in the web. That wasn't true 5 years ago. Right now, you are doing React component, Vue component, Angular component. They are different, but there is the idea of cutting your code in smaller blocks and be able to make this block as independent as possible. So the architectural base is already there. And the web components today, for the last 2 years, they are really web platform. It means they are part of the standard, but they are implemented in the browsers. You don't need to use any external code, an external library in order to use web components. You write them, you send them to the browser, and they work. But I know some people, especially React fans, told me, yeah, but if your web component things is so great, why there are so many web components libraries? They are, well, it isn't a problem, it's a force, it's a strength. The web component standard, it's a web standard. It's a low-level standard. And that's important, that's nice. Why? Because they must suit any use. They don't, when you use a framework, the framework tells how you must do things. You are doing things Angular way, React way. The standard must be low-level enough to allow you to use it in any way you need. So the standard are the basic bricks, and then the libraries are the helpers. They allow you to write components in a certain way, maybe the way you want to use, and you can go further, you can go faster. So it's a bit like tools. There is the standard, you need to make a hole in a wall, and there are a lot of ways of doing it. With web components, you can choose the right tool for the right problem. So the same base, but on that base you can build a Bout house, or you can build a concrete house. It's up to you according to your needs, your budget, anything. So the fact that there are too many libraries, it isn't a bug, it's a feature, but really, because you will be able to find the web component library that suits your needs. And you are going to, if you are a React person, you will be able to use a stencil, for example, and you are going to be able to code in a very React way. If you are most of an Angular person, you could use more things like Polymer or LitElement, and you are going to have a similar paradigm that you use in your favorite framework. So, for example, let's talk about a stencil. Do you know Ionic? Ionic was a company that survives to the AngularJS to Angular migration. They did a wonderful framework over Angular to build mobile application, getting fancy look and feel similar to iPhone in iPhone and similar to Android in Android, with a lot of specific made components to have the right look and feel. It was great. When they released the first version, Google released Angular, so they took 2 years of work, they put it in the trash bin. Good. They decided to do it again, this time for Angular. They did Ionic 2, and when they released it, they noticed that many developers didn't want to use it because they didn't like Angular. So they have a great framework, but only for 30% of developers. That was a problem. So they decided to put again everything in the trash bin and write it again. But they wanted this time something that every developer could want to use. So they rewrite everything using web components. but they were Angular people, but also they had been doing a lot of React. They didn't like the libraries that there was at the time. They decided to do their own web component creating library, Stencil. So Stencil, it isn't really a library, for example, it's a compiler. You write your code in TypeScript for Stencil. You call Stencil at the build process, and they are going to compile it into vanilla, low-level, very performant web components. It's a wholly new approach that makes web components that are really compact and really fast. And so now, Ionic 4, the last release, it was released several months ago, it is fully based on web components. And that means you can do it in Angular, but you can also do Ionic over React, over Vue, or directly without any framework. And you are going to have a great experience when developing hybrid mobile application, simply by choosing the framework that suits better to your developing practice. So it has lots and lots of features, but as I am slower in English than in French or Spanish, it has also server-side rendering. There was, for example, another old contender, Polymer. It was the first library for web components, and they have evolved again 2 years ago. Okay, Polymer 3, it's great. And today, for example, it's complicated. Let's try to explain it in 3 minutes. Technically, it's deprecated. So, I have been speaking about polymers for 5 years. I should be sad. No, not at all. For me, it means good news. Because let's do a dive in the Polymer history. Polymer was created when the web platform was younger. It was a nice tool for a bygone era, a bit like a lightsaber in Star Wars. Yeah. The web platform wasn't ready, and the framework weren't there. It was before Angular. So now, it's like using a knife in a gunfight. A lot of things that Polymer does are already native in the web platform. For me, it's a good thing today it's deprecated, because we don't need it anymore. But you have been writing code for Polymer for 5 years. Yeah. And for me, it isn't a problem. All the components I have written for the last 5 years, they work. They still work, and they will work for years because they are web components. So I can write my new components with another better, faster, more compact library. Thank you. I can already use them with my old Polymer components, and I will migrate my old components if and when I will need to do it without any pressure. That's the force of web components. So without any metaphor or any Indiana Jones, Polymer now, it isn't a library anymore. It's a project and a team at Google and an open source community trying to build tools for the web platform. The library, Polymer Library, it was only one library. Today, they are working, for example, in LitElement. It's the spiritual son of Polymer for a new paradigm, for the new web. So it is way faster, it's way lighter, and it works really, really well, using things that are native to the platform. Like, for example, the target templates. So they are able to do all the template generation without using any JS6 sucky things. They are using native feature of the platform. JavaScript target templates, you can do interpolation. They are going to generate the DOM tree in a fast and efficient way, but with real JavaScript code without needing any external tooling. So for me, it's a big difference. So the standard is a big thing for me. Okay, React invented JS6 in order to do templates, but you need a compiler, and it only works in the application. Now you have a solution that is really similar, but it works everywhere without any tooling because it is the platform. It's JavaScript, HTML, CSS. And I have 7 minutes. One more thing, like our Steve Jobs like to say. Polymer, it was an example. For me, what is important, it isn't the library, it is the web component idea. And I want to make you think about why you should try to use the web platform when you can, even if you like your framework, especially when you like or you love your framework. I have been there too. Everybody loves their current favorite framework. It's nice. You spend a lot of time with your framework. You learn to know it. You learn how it works, and you can make great things together. It's wonderful. I have been there. I have loved AngularJS. We spent quite a bit quality moments. But at you're sure you really love your framework, like until death, as you're sure you are really ready to marry your framework? Or let me rephrase it. Have you think about the divorce? Hey, I know React is great, and it makes you feel some really nice butterflies in your tummy. But what about 1 year? You will be there with your React, and you will see another nice framework there. And then you will need to divorce. Are you ready to pay that divorce? Are you ready to rewrite all your code with the new framework? Are you ready to forget all the code you have made together? Oh, the children components. Oh, don't forget, even if you go with a new framework, you are still going to maintain the old children components for years, 2 weekends a month, legacy children. So please think about it. Most of you, if you are experienced, you have already survived several divorces like that. Make you a favor. Next time, don't do it. You don't need to do all those children components from several different frameworks. Skip it. If you code using the platform, if you code web components, today you and your React, you are going to enjoy your components, you are going to spend some wonderful time together, and then when the new framework arrives, so React, you know, it isn't you, it is me. Bye. But the children, they come with me. Hey, do you want to care my children? And you are going to use all your components in your new framework. Any problem. You are going to have the good side of your framework without having to deal with the bad side. Why? Because they are web platform, they are standard. So you have lots and lots of libraries, and there are new ones every time. Hybrid.js had lots of components, really pretty, rather fast. Stencil, you are going to compile ultra compact, ultra fast components. little element, you are going to do wonderful templates, easy to read, easy to use, using only standard. Skate.js, you are going to use almost point by point the same paradigm that we React components, but for web components. And there are a lot of other libraries. Find one that suits your taste and do your components, but without worry. If your taste changes in several months or several years, you will be able to use another library and your all components will still work. And one last thing, frameworks have begun to understand that. Angular understands that people don't want to use only Angular, so they have Angular component. You will be able to export your Angular components to web components. They will be rather fat web components for the moment, but at least you can do it. It can help making the divorce less painful. Vue, there is a Vue web components wrapper, and most frameworks, even React, begin to realize that web components aren't a problem for them. It's a strength for them. It allows people to use a framework without worrying about how they will be able to quit that framework. And that's nice also for the framework. So please, next time you have a web application to do or a new feature to add to your application, please remember that before beginning to code. Maybe you can do a minor feature, a minor UI component in web components, test them, and see, you will see they work. Use web components. Your future self will thank me, and we thank you about that. So I think I have 2 minutes for questions if you have. Thank you very much. Any question? Oh my God, I don't. Hey, yeah.
Perdón. Y no... Se me ha oído el resto, ¿no? De todas maneras hablo alto.
No te preocupes. Don't worry, I will rephrase it in English for the video.
Okay. Pues eso, consultoría muchas veces trabaja por proyectos y le falta esa comunicación a nivel de equipo, aunque tengan equipos pequeños o grandes, no comparten a ese nivel. Y cliente con su producto dice, tengo un producto, 2, 3, me merece la pena la inversión en conocimiento y en forma de trabajar, en el cambio de paradigma.
Yeah, so the question is, maybe web components aren't getting traction today because of the contractor system. Many companies don't develop themselves the application. They pass by contractors, by consulting companies, and then they aren't keen to reuse code from a project to another. Maybe. But maybe it's also a problem of pedagogy, because even those consulting companies, if they began to invest in web components and to teach their customers about web components, they can use them as a strength, as a way to save cost. And everybody knows that if there is something that consulting companies and contractors love, is saving money. So I think it's most of a problem, how could we say it in a politically correct way? People don't want, if they have a project and they can do it in the way they have done it before, they don't want to propose something new because they will need to explain it to the customer and to learn it in the team. It means it is a risk that is going to pay in the future, but in the moment it's a risk. So yeah, I think there is something like that, but I think if the company has some vision, they should realize that they are trying to make things easier today, but they are forgetting that they could make things easier and cheaper in the future. So I agree with you. I think it's a pity, and I really hope that with talks like this, and with you, when you will begin to play with web components more, maybe it can begin to change. You can always dream. Some other last question, please? No? So thank you very much. You have other questions. I will be outside at the OVH booth. I think if you want to talk about hosting, cloud, Kubernetes, or almost anything like that, you can also come to talk with me. Thank you very much. I hope you like it.